My name is Anya Hayes. Before that, for 5 long years, it was Anya Hayes Caldwell. But before all of it, I was simply Anya Hayes, a girl from the salt-sprayed coast of Maine who believed that the right light could make anything beautiful. I built a life on that belief, first as a photographer, then as the founder of Luminance Events, a boutique event design firm in the heart of Portland. I didn't just plan parties, I curated atmospheres. I chased the golden hour for my clients, orchestrating moments that felt less like events and more like cherished memories waiting to happen. My work was my art, a testament to a girl who grew up with little but saw beauty everywhere. That's how I met Rowan Caldwell. He was a scion of one of Portland's oldest families, the kind whose name is etched onto library wings and hospital foundations. Their wealth was quiet, woven into the city's fabric like the deep, cold roots of an ancient oak. I met him while designing the annual fundraiser for the Portland Maritime Museum, a Caldwell family patronage. He wasn't like the other men I'd encountered in that world, men whose confidence was a suit they wore. Rowan's was quieter, more thoughtful. He was drawn to my passion, the way my eyes would light up when I talked about the specific shade of blue the sky turns just after sunset. You don't just see things, he told me once, over coffee in a small cafe in the old port, the smell of roasted beans and briny air mixing around us. You feel them. You make other people feel them. He pursued me with a gentle persistence that felt like a slow, warming tide. There were signs, of course, currents beneath the calm surface that I chose to ignore. His mother, Beatrice Caldwell, was a woman of formidable grace and even more formidable expectations. At our first formal dinner at the family estate in Cape Elizabeth, a sprawling shingled house overlooking the churning Atlantic, she appraised me with a cool, discerning eye. "Your work is charming, Anya," she'd said, the word charming landing like a carefully placed stone. "It's wonderful that you've made something for yourself." Self-reliance is such a quintessentially American virtue. It was meant as a compliment, but it felt like a classification, a neat box labeled other. I was in love, though, and love has a way of softening the sharpest edges. Rowan seemed different from his family. He appreciated my humble beginnings, or so I thought. He loved my stories of collecting sea glass on rocky beaches and working 3 jobs to put myself through art school. When he proposed under a sky full of stars on a deserted stretch of sand beach in Acadia, I believed we were building a bridge between our 2 worlds. The wedding, naturally, was my masterpiece. I poured my soul into it, a symphony of driftwood, wildflowers, and candlelight against the dramatic backdrop of the Maine coast. Beatrice had her suggestions, of course. The guest list was too artistic, the menu too provincial, the string quartet not a full orchestra. Rowan acted as a buffer, but I noticed he rarely won a direct confrontation with his mother. "It's just her way," he'd say, soothing my frayed nerves. "She means well." After we were married, the subtle dismissals became a quiet, corrosive pattern. My business, Luminance Events, was a source of both pride for me and a kind of quaint amusement for the Caldwells. They hired me for their functions, but it felt less like a vote of confidence and more like a convenience. Beatrice would change meticulously planned details at the last minute. My professional opinions were treated as suggestions to be considered and then discarded, and my successes were often reframed as a reflection of their influence. "Anya has such a wonderful touch with these things," Beatrice would coo to her friends, her hand resting lightly on my arm. "It's like having our own personal decorator right in the family." The phrase, "in the family," always felt provisional, a status I had to continually earn. Rowan, my husband, never corrected them. He saw it as keeping the peace, but with every concession, a small piece of the bridge between our worlds crumbled away. The plan for Beatrice's 70th birthday celebration in Florence, Italy, was meant to be my magnum opus, a chance to finally, unequivocally prove my worth. It was to be a week-long immersion in Tuscan culture, culminating in an unforgettable dinner at a private villa in the hills of Fiesole, overlooking the Duomo. I dove into the project with a desperate kind of energy, leveraging every connection, calling in every favor. It had to be perfect. It was during this intense planning period that I began to see the rot in the Caldwell family's foundations. Deposits I requested were slow to arrive. Esteemed vendors in Florence, old colleagues of mine, sent polite but firm emails about outstanding payments. When I brought it up with Rowan, he was dismissive. The family office is just being cautious with the international wires, Anya. Don't worry about it. But I did worry. One evening, searching for a shared tax document on his laptop, I stumbled upon a folder that wasn't meant for me. It contained financial statements showing a portfolio hemorrhaging value, properties leveraged to their limits, a slow, silent collapse hidden behind the grand facade of old money. Still, I pushed forward, using Luminance's capital to secure the necessary bookings. I told myself it was a temporary cash flow issue, that Rowan would explain everything after his mother's birthday was behind us. I was a fixer, a planner. This was just another problem to solve. Then, the morning we were due to fly to Florence, everything changed. Rowan was in the shower, his phone lying on the nightstand. It buzzed, lighting up with a message preview. It was from a name I recognized, Tessa, his ex-girlfriend from college, the one Beatrice still spoke of with a wistful fondness. The message read, "Can't wait to see you. Florence will be our new beginning." Has she been told? My heart stopped. My fingers, acting of their own accord, unlocked the phone. I had never violated his privacy before, but in that moment, I knew I was no longer a wife looking at her husband's phone. I was an archaeologist unearthing a ruin. The message thread was a novel of betrayal, stretching back nearly a year. There were plans for a future, discussions of a life together after the inevitable and gentle separation from me. And there it was, a photo of an ultrasound. A baby. Their baby, due in 5 months. I screenshotted everything, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone steady. I sent the images to my secure personal email, then deleted the thread and the evidence of my snooping. I packed my suitcase, my mind a maelstrom of grief and ice-cold clarity. I kissed my husband goodbye, my lips feeling like a stranger's on his cheek, and boarded the plane to Italy with his family, a woman walking into her own beautifully designed execution. The Tuscan sun was a soft, buttery gold as our convoy of black Lancia vans wound its way from the airport into the heart of Florence. I had arranged for the Caldwell's preferred car service, a detail I knew Beatrice would notice. She did, but not with gratitude. "I do hope the drivers know the route to the hotel," she remarked to Rowan's father, Walter, as if I weren't sitting in the jump seat in front of them. "These local services can be so unreliable." "They're the top-rated executive transport in Tuscany, Beatrice," I said, my voice even. "They chauffeured the G7 delegation last year." My comment was met with a small, dismissive sniff. Our hotel, the Villa San Michele, was a former monastery nestled in the Fiesole Hills, its facade attributed to Michelangelo. I had secured the best suites, each with a private garden or a terrace overlooking the sprawling city below. Welcome baskets filled with local Chianti, handcrafted leather goods, and artisanal olive oil awaited them. Beatrice barely glanced at the personalized itinerary I had printed on heavy, cream-colored cardstock before setting it on a side table. "We have our old favorites here, dear," she said with a gentle smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll likely just do our own thing. But thank you for the effort." In our suite, a magnificent space with frescoed ceilings and a view that could make a poet weep, Rowan immediately took a call on the terrace. His back was to me, his voice a low, intimate murmur. "Just a last-minute deal at the firm," he said when he came back inside, his eyes avoiding mine. The lie was so casual, so practiced, it was almost elegant. That night's welcome dinner, at a Michelin-starred restaurant in the Altrarno district, was the first rehearsal for the main event. I had designed the seating chart for flow and conversation, placing myself next to Rowan. When we arrived, the place cards had been subtly rearranged. I found myself at the end of the long, candlelit table, seated between Rowan's elderly aunt, who was hard of hearing, and his brother-in-law, who spent the entire meal scrolling through stock market updates on his phone. Laughter and conversation flowed around me, a river in which I had no current. They reminisced about past trips to Florence, stories from which I was absent, inside jokes whose punchlines I couldn't guess. When I tried to steer the conversation toward the week's plans, the private Uffizi tour I had arranged before opening hours, the truffle hunting excursion Rowan's sister, Isabel, cut in. "Oh, Anya, that's so sweet of you to have planned all that," she said, her tone bright and condescending. "But Mummy and I were thinking of hitting the designer outlets tomorrow. A bit of a family tradition. You wouldn't enjoy it. Why don't you use the time to double-check the arrangements for the birthday dinner? You're so good at that." The next few days were a masterclass in quiet exclusion. I would wake to find Rowan already gone, a note on the pillow about an early breakfast with his father. Plans would shift without my knowledge, a casual lunch I wasn't invited to, an impromptu drive to Siena that everyone but me seemed to know about. Conversations would halt when I entered a room. I was a ghost in their meticulously curated family portrait. On the third day, I found what I was looking for. Rowan had left his leather briefcase open on a chair while he joined his brother for a swim. Tucked inside a folder labeled personal, I found the documents. A draft of a divorce settlement, prepared by the Caldwell family lawyers 2 months prior. It offered me a sum that was insulting, a pittance designed to ensure a quick and quiet exit. And then, the most chilling discovery, a one-page document, a loosely scripted set of talking points for Rowan. It was a guide on how to announce our separation at Beatrice's birthday dinner, framing it as a mutual, amicable decision to a room full of their closest friends and family. My public humiliation was to be the evening's surprise entertainment. My hands didn't even tremble this time. I took photos of every page, my movements precise and methodical. Beatrice's 70th birthday party was not just a celebration, it was the stage for my dispossession. Instead of confronting him, I redirected my fury. I became the perfect event planner, a smiling, efficient phantom. I met with the villa's manager, finalized the floral arrangements of white peonies and gardenias, and confirmed the 7-course tasting menu with the caterer. All the while, I was gathering my own ammunition, downloading bank statements from shared accounts, saving email chains, and documenting every instance of their financial deception. My professional mask was flawless. My inner world was a silent, raging forge, hammering grief and betrayal into something hard and sharp. The morning of Beatrice's birthday arrived, clear and achingly beautiful. The day was scheduled with back-to-back activities I had planned, but I knew they would be my last acts as a Caldwell. While they took a guided tour of the Boboli Gardens, I made my excuses, claiming a last-minute issue with the lighting vendor for the evening. I went instead to the hotel's business center. As I was printing the final menus, I heard Beatrice's voice from the concierge lounge next door. The wall was thin, her tone unmistakable. "There will be 12 seats at the main table, not 13, she said into her phone, her voice crisp and authoritative. "I don't care what the original floor plan says. The updated chart I sent this morning is final." A pause. "No, it won't be a problem. The situation has been handled. My son's wife will be leaving before the main course. A family matter. There is no need for a scene." The blood drained from my face. It wasn't just a miscount. It wasn't an oversight. It was a stage direction. My empty chair was to be the physical manifestation of my erasure. I calmly gathered my papers, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm, like a drum before a battle. I returned to my suite and pulled out my laptop. I began to compose a series of emails, my fingers flying across the keyboard. If the Caldwells wanted a memorable night, I would give them one. I would give them a masterpiece of an ending, designed with all the meticulous care and attention to detail they had so long taken for granted. As the planner, I arrived at the Villa Gambarea an hour before the guests. The villa, perched above Florence, was a vision. The gardens cascaded down the hillside, and the terrace where dinner would be held offered a view of the Duomo, glowing like a coral jewel in the fading light. I walked the grounds, my silk gown whispering against the ancient stone. I checked every place setting, adjusted every floral centerpiece, and spoke with the head waiter, Matteo, ensuring the vintage Barolo was decanted. Everything was perfect, a perfect stage for a perfect storm. I returned to the hotel to find the Caldwells gathered in the lobby, a tableau of quiet wealth and anticipation. Beatrice was regal in a deep emerald gown, the famous Caldwell pearls gleaming at her throat. Rowan's eyes met mine, and for a fleeting second, I saw a flicker of something guilt, perhaps, or just the anxiety of a man about to perform a difficult task. "Anya, you look lovely," Beatrice said, her smile as polished as her pearls. "Shall we?" The short drive to the villa was filled with a strained, bright chatter that I made no effort to join. As we stepped out onto the terrace, the assembled family friends, about 40 in total, broke into applause for Beatrice. She beamed, a gracious queen accepting the adoration of her court. One by one, the family moved toward the long, beautifully appointed table at the center of the terrace. A table that should have had 13 place settings. I walked behind Rowan, watching as he found his seat beside his mother. I moved to the space between him and his father, the spot where my name card should have been. There was nothing. No chair. No plate. No glass. Just an empty space, a deliberate void in the otherwise perfect arrangement. The hum of conversation around me continued for a moment, a symphony of willful ignorance. Then, a few people noticed me standing there, a silent, solitary figure. The chatter faltered. Beatrice was the first to speak, her voice a perfect imitation of surprised concern. "Is something wrong, Anya?" "It seems I'm missing a place," I said. My voice was quiet, but in the sudden lull, it carried across the terrace. The performance began, just as their script had intended. Isabel frowned in feigned confusion. Walter cleared his throat. "There must have been a mix-up with the villa staff," he murmured. And then, Rowan delivered his line. He let out a soft, almost imperceptible chuckle, a sound of practiced, easy charm. "Oops," he said, looking around the table with a disarming smile. "Guess we miscounted." A few of the family members laughed with Hema gentle, knowing titter. It wasn't a joke, it was a signal. It was the shared, silent understanding of the outsider being put in her place. In that moment, the 5 years of my marriage coalesced into a single, searing point of humiliation. I looked at each of their faces, Beatrice, triumphant, Walter, complicit, and Rowan, my husband, watching me with a look of detached pity, as if I were a problem he was about to solve. They expected tears. They expected a scene. They expected me to flee in shame, allowing Rowan to deliver his speech about our amicable separation to a sympathetic audience. They had planned my exit down to the last detail. But they had never understood me. They saw the artist, the girl from Maine, and assumed she was soft. They had never seen the granite cliffs she was carved from. I straightened my back, met Rowan's gaze, and delivered the single line that would incinerate their script. "It seems I'm not family." The words were not angry, merely a statement of fact. The smiles vanished from their faces. Rowan's easy posture stiffened. I had deviated from their plan. "I'll let you enjoy your dinner," I added, and with a final, sweeping glance at the beautiful party I had created for them, I turned and walked away. "Anya, don't be so dramatic," Rowan called after me, his voice tight with annoyance. "We can sort this out." I didn't look back. I walked through the fragrant gardens, past the softly lit cypress trees, and out of the villa gates. On the quiet road outside, I found a stone bench overlooking the city lights of Florence. I sat, took a deep breath of the cool night air, and pulled out my phone. The Caldwells would be congratulating themselves now, relieved that the unpleasantness was over. They believed they had 30 minutes before the first course was served. I had 29 more than I needed. My first email was to Matteo, the head of catering at the villa. It contained a pre-arranged cancellation code for the event, a contingency I build into all major contracts. Attached was a digital copy of the contract, signed by me, and proof that the final payment, guaranteed by my company's credit card, had just been reversed. My second call was to the transport company, canceling the return journey for all 47 guests. Then came the emails to the hotel in Florence, canceling the remainder of their stay, effective immediately. The truffle hunter, the private museum guides, the winery in Chianti one by one, I dismantled the rest of their perfect week, reclaiming every deposit I had fronted from my own business accounts. The texts from Rowan started as a trickle, then became a flood. "Anya, where did you go? This is childish." Then, "Mother is very upset. You are embarrassing all of us." I ignored them. 28 minutes after I walked out, I sent him one final message, a screenshot of the reversed payment to the caterer, with a simple caption, "As I'm not family, I can't be responsible for family expenses. Enjoy your birthday dinner." Then I turned off my phone. I hired a local car to take me to a small, elegant hotel I knew on the other side of the Arno River. I checked in under my maiden name, Anya Hayes. For the first time in 5 years, it felt like my own. I didn't witness the immediate fallout, but I pieced it together later from a frantic, late-night voicemail Rowan left me, a message I listened to with the detached calm of a strategist reviewing a successful campaign. Matteo, the caterer, had approached Walter Caldwell just as the appetizers were being cleared. He had politely informed him that the payment for the entire event had been rescinded by the planner on record and that a new form of payment, a guarantee of over €60,000 was required before the main course could be served. Panic had erupted. Walter's corporate card was declined. The Caldwell family office had put a hold on large international transactions due to their precarious financial state. Beatrice, in a desperate attempt to save face in front of her friends, had tried to offer her pearl necklace as collateral, an offer the caterer had discreetly but firmly refused. The guests, confused and hungry, began to murmur amongst themselves. Then the news rippled through the party that their transportation back to Florence had been cancelled. The perfectly curated event devolved into a chaotic scramble. The Caldwell's friends, members of their own privileged class, were not accustomed to being stranded at a remote Tuscan villa with no food and no way home. The facade of Caldwell grace and power shattered in a single evening. Their humiliation was not a quiet, personal affair, as mine was intended to be. It was a public spectacle, a story that would be whispered at dinner parties from Portland to Palm Beach for years to come. I flew out of Florence the next morning on a flight I booked to Paris, not back to the life I had left. I needed time. I needed distance. I spent a week wandering the city, losing myself in museums and rainy streets, feeling the layers of Anya Hayes Caldwell peel away, revealing the woman I had been before. My phone remained off, but my lawyer in Portland was busy. I had forwarded her the entire dossier, the evidence of the affair and the baby, the divorce settlement drafts, the documentation of their hidden financial troubles and Rowan's attempts to shield assets. When I finally flew back to Portland, I didn't go to the Grand House in Cape Elizabeth. I checked into a hotel and had movers collect my personal belongings the next day. I took my art, my books, my clothes, and the photography equipment I'd owned since college. I left behind the jewelry, the designer furniture, the life that had been a beautiful, empty set piece. A week later, Rowan found me. He showed up at the temporary studio I'd rented in a converted warehouse by the docks. He looked thinner, worn down. The easy confidence was gone, replaced by a raw desperation. "You have to stop this, Anya," he said, his voice hoarse. "The caterer is suing for damages. The hotel is threatening collections. My father's investors are getting spooked by the rumors." "That sounds like a Caldwell family problem," I replied, continuing to unbox a portfolio of my early photography. "It's our problem," he insisted. "We're still married. My debt is your debt." I finally turned to look at him, allowing myself a small, sad smile. Not when a husband systematically hides assets in anticipation of a divorce, Rowan. Not when he conspires with his family to defraud his wife. My lawyer calls that marital misconduct. It tends to protect the innocent party. His face went pale. He finally understood that I wasn't just lashing out in anger. I was acting with precision. I never wanted to hurt you, he whispered, sinking onto a packing crate. What did you want, Rowan? I asked, my voice genuinely curious. Did you want to use my talents to maintain your family's social standing while you started a new family with someone they approved of? Did you want to discard me neatly when I was no longer convenient? He couldn't answer. He just stared at his hands. I did love you, you know, he said finally. In the beginning. I believe you, I said, and I meant it. But you loved your family's approval more. You loved your comfort more. And you didn't respect me enough to be honest. I told him my terms. A clean, uncontested divorce. I wanted nothing from him but my freedom. The documents my lawyer held would remain private, a form of insurance. If they came after me, if they contested the divorce, if they tried to damage my reputation or my business, everything would become public record. He left without another word. The Caldwell empire did not collapse overnight, but it began a slow, dignified decay. They sold the estate in Cape Elizabeth and downsized. The news of Rowan and Tess's baby, born 6 months after our divorce was finalized, recontextualized the story of that night in Florence for anyone who still had doubts. My business, Luminance Events, flourished. My story, in a strange way, became my best marketing tool. Clients came to me not just for my artistic vision, but for my integrity. They knew I was a woman who understood the importance of details, and who would not stand for being made to feel small. A year after that night, I found myself standing on another terrace, this one overlooking the rugged coast of Big Sur, California. I was designing a wedding for a young tech billionaire and his artist fiancé. They were kind and in love, and they respected my work implicitly. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery strokes of orange and purple, my phone buzzed. It was an email from an unknown address. It was from Beatrice Caldwell. It was short, just a few lines. Anya, I have been informed that you are the only designer in the country who can salvage the annual museum fundraiser. I know it is a long shot. But I am asking if you would consider it. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the past. But in the stilted, formal request, I could read the subtext, the humiliation of having to ask, the admission that my talent was irreplaceable, the quiet acknowledgement that they had been wrong. I thought about it for a moment, the sea breeze cool on my face. I thought about the pain and the betrayal, but also about the woman I had become in the aftermath. The missing chair in Florence had been meant to be my end, the symbol of my exclusion. Instead, it had become my throne. It was the empty space I had needed to step into to reclaim my own life. I typed a polite, professional reply, declining the offer due to a full schedule. Then I put my phone away, raised my glass of champagne to the magnificent, fading light, and got back to work, curating a beautiful new beginning.